The Virtual Boy was a... I would give you a short history about the Virtual Boy, how it came to be, the trends going on at the time that would result in such a stupid product being released by a major company, but I'm not going to do that. If you're watching this, I figure you already know what the damn pair of goggles on crane legs did so spectacularly bad. The reason I'm covering this after Wario Land 2, even though this released first, is because I genuinely wanted to buy a Virtual Boy just to play this game. At a certain point, I accepted my pathetic life would not be involving money anytime soon, and when it did, I sure as hell did not want to spend my first paycheck on a piece of shit console I'd only ever play one game on. And definitely not one that would result in me being billed by an ophthalmologist. It'd be a cute novelty, you know, but I have to learn how to say no. You know, I have a room filled with Wario merchandise. I have to stop somewhere. Isn't that something, though? The raw appeal of Wario really made me consider purchasing a Virtual Boy. That man has too much power over me. He'd steal my dog, sell her back to me, and I'd still thank him. Okay, enough talk about the Virtual Boy. I just want to mention why I'm not talking about it. You know what it is. So, let's get on to the game. The game in question being Virtual Boy Wario Land, the sequel to Wario's very first adventure on the Game Boy, which also donned the moniker of Super Mario Land 3 for whatever stupid reason. Anyway, back to Wario Cruise. No wait, that's wrong. That was the game's original name. Maybe that's back when Nintendo was still considering making a real Mario game for the Virtual Boy, a cancelled game by the name of Mario Land Virtual Boy. I guess Nintendo thought having two games with the word land in the titles would have confused customers. I completely agree with that belief. People are very stupid, but either way, there's sparsely any information on that game, so I'm not going into it. Though in the bits and pieces we saw of it, there were signs of Wario having a significant presence within the game, showing a giant block of his head. I think it was acting as a thwomp. Yeah, again, there's just like screenshots and like a little bit of footage. There's not much to say. I'm pretty sure Wario was just going to be the villain again. Would have been strange, because at that point he had already had his own game, so... But whatever, who knows? That game's cancelled, they felt it would be better to have this game, and continue the land label with Wario. Mario did already have the world. I guess they figured Wario could have some land. Also, the Virtual Boy Wario Land, what a great title, right? Fucking dog shit. I'm just gonna shorten that to Wario Land VB. Okay. This game came in hot in 1995, only a year after the first Wario Land in 1994. Usually that spells disaster, but this was back in the old days, you know, when animators, game developers, and other thankless creative positions were held by people who only ran on uncut Colombian cocaine. They made shit good, and they made it quickly. Nowadays, it takes Nintendo 6 to 8 years just to release shitty DLC. Well, alright, they didn't do it that quickly back in the day, but it wasn't as bad a sign as it is now. Anyway, it's still much faster than Wario Land's 2 release in '98. Okay, too much shit about dates. Let's get the story over with so we can get to the juicy bit, the game. The manual's prologue is written in the first person as Wario, who explains he was on vacation flying in his all but forgotten plane, the Bulldog, to the Awazan River Basin. Awazan. Is this Wario's hatred for Mario runs so deep that he refuses to say the letter M? Then again, I don't know, it might just be that Awazan fits into his autistic vocal stimming.
Hurry up, will you?
Actually, it's kind of interesting seeing he used to have a little plan, you know? It was so prominent in the beginnings of his appearances. It was kind of like his ability to, like, do magic. That was, like, the most short-lived out of every trait he had. And then for a while, he, like, used bombs a lot. Like, even his logo for, like, Wario's Woods or Wario Blast included a bomb in the word Wario. When it comes to the magic shit, I'm pretty sure that, like, bucket on Mario's head in the Mario and Wario Japan only game that's entirely in English for some schizoid fucking reason, had that plane, the Bulldog. That was the first time it appeared. It was just like a little mono plane in that game, and it was a mono plane in Wario's Woods. But now, in Wario Land VB, it's a Z-plane to fit in with, you know, a little story that they have going on here. After this, it then disappeared in Wario Land 2, reappeared for Wario Land 3 in its last significant appearance as a biplane. Anyway, getting back on track. Okay, the story. Okay, Wario landed the Bulldog near a waterfall to relax in the shade while sipping down what I refuse to believe isn't alcohol. We'll just call it vacation juice, like Nintendo does. Okay, so while Wario enjoys his margarita cruise, he notices some strange creatures wearing masks that I'm sure are offensive to somebody if they try hard enough, entering the waterfall. Nosy isn't just a way to describe Wario's appearance, it's also a personality trait, so he rushes in to see where they're going, and when he catches up to them, he finds there's a huge cave hidden behind the falls, and in the back of the cave is a mountain of glorious treasure. Some enemies jump Wario, but he's far too much of a man for them to handle. Alas, the floor collapses underneath him, presumably from just how much muscle he is carrying, and has him fall all the way down to the bottom of the cave. Wario then vows to steal all their treasure as he makes his way back up to the top of the cave to that mound of gold he saw. After the beginning cutscene's over, you'll notice just how pretty the game is, because at the beginning, you know, the cutscene's nice and all, but this is actual gameplay. So the massive upgrade in visuals isn't just because they learned how to use 8-bit better. This is full-on 32-bit graphics. They didn't even go to 16, like fucking straight jump, resulting in a huge upgrade from the Game Boy in terms of visuals. Right as you start, you notice how smooth the giant spiked balls swing toward and away from you and the screen. Wario's after-image effects when he dashes makes you feel a lot faster than in the last game. The backgrounds are much nicer. Overall, the animations and sprites are fantastic, even with the horrific color palette of the Virtual Boy. I mean, think about it. This was 3 years before Wario Land 2 came out, let alone when it was optimized for the Game Boy Color. So from Wario Land 1 to Wario Land VB, you get such a big jump. Even if the only color change is from putrid green with pale green accents to blinding reds and black backgrounds. Speaking of backgrounds, a problem with emulating this game nowadays is the background. Since the Virtual Boy's whole thing was the stereoscopic 3D being strapped to your eyes, backgrounds in the Virtual Boy itself, I'm sure, are much easier to distinguish from the foregrounds, but playing without the 3D effect, the complex textures and overlapping sprites make it difficult to know where the hell everything is. Still, going into the background and foreground is a really fun mechanic. It reminds me of what the Donkey Kong Country series would be doing later on when Retro Studios took over. I'm sure there were a lot of games that did this between Wario Land VB and Donkey Kong that did this, but I can't really remember any. Aside from Little Big Planet, I guess. Anyway, you reach these little panels that shoot you either way. It can be kind of annoying to line yourself up properly into them, but just like the backgrounds, it's nothing you don't get used to. Also, I'm pretty sure I fucked up on my first video and said that the first Wario Land is the only time Wario wore a safari hat.
Yeah, the artwork for this and the second game depicted him with this hat.
But I was wrong. Hopefully for the last time when it comes to Wario. I don't know why he continues to wear it. The sprites are bigger and more detailed than ever, with nicer animations. I don't think you need the hat to distinguish Wario from Mario anymore. Not that that big fat bastard sprite in the first one was really easy to confuse with Mario, but whatever. Distinguishing levels from one another was a weakness of the previous game that is thankfully kind of absent here, almost entirely, since the variety of level themes is much better in Wario Land VB. As you go up in the cave, all the levels have their own feel and look, which keeps everything feeling just as breezy as Wario himself. Even with that problem of struggling to discern level layers from one another, it's all kind of just fun to look at and interact with. All the hidden rooms, routes, breakable blocks, treasure rooms, and secret areas are all fun to explore for and through. Overall, I'm really impressed with this game's visuals. It's insane to me that Nintendo didn't bring this over to the 3DS, but instead they added pointless 3D effects to a bunch of NES games, but I'm not going to start whinging about this now, I'll do that later. As I was saying, they're even more fun to explore than in the first game. You get a fun little high of checking every crack in a level for as much money as possible, learning the best routes to take while collecting the treasure to get the best ending. Endings I'll get to later, just like the whinging. But really quickly, I just want to mention the music that accompanies these levels. All I wanted to mention is the fact that it's yet again barely worth mentioning. No, that's about it. Honestly, early Wario Land's weakest parts is their music. They serve completely fine as background noise that matches the unconventionality of Wario. It's just that it's so fucking boring. When playing any level, it immediately disappears from your ears and you just focus on sound effects and every other aspect of the game. Don't get me wrong, I can appreciate good ambience music or just good level music that isn't necessarily great to listen to on its own. It's the same as a film score, you know. What matters most is establishing a mood or an ambience to accompany the game, to prop it up. Unless it's a rhythm game or somehow like the main gimmick of the game, it really shouldn't be distracting or the thing that shines most, but it's still bad. The problem here is that the ambience it's creating is bumbling, tired, and slow, just like the last one. Sure, its fart-sounding music and slow tone is in stark contrast to that of the Mario Bros. Series, but that doesn't make it good. It's so weird the opening theme is genuinely decent and pretty atmospheric, grandiose even. It has this build-up and fun sound that makes you feel like you're about to embark on an adventure, and then starts blasting the actual tune. It's fun, but then you get into levels and... I wish I was better at articulating my feelings about music in general. There's not really anything to research about like the intricacies of why they made the Wario Land Virtual Boy music the way it is. I know, shocking, there's no Netflix documentaries on that, but until they make them, I will never understand why they decided to pair such fast-paced feeling gameplay to such boring and lumbering music. It feels like they're looping random beats and noises and called it a day. It's genuinely not good background music. This time around, not even the credit theme is even fun. Overall, it just does not match up to the quality of the levels they play over, let alone the quality of the game itself. But in general, the levels are just really good, and have made a lot of changes and additions that let you peek into Wario Land's amazing future, and games that would inspire long after the series died. In this game, you no longer need to summon a large coin equating 10 regular coins to open up the end gate. Instead, you need to find a key hidden around the levels to gain access to an elevator that will raise you up through the cave. You don't have to carry the key, it just goes into your inventory, and even if you die, the game saves the fact that you did collect it. And that goes for treasure as well. It's pretty forgiving, and even if you get through the level without collecting the treasure, you can always go back down the elevator to replay the level. Though you will have to play it backward, which is kind of weird, but weird is where Wario lives, so it's not that out of place. It's funny to think about it comparing to Mario's 2D adventures where, like in the first one, you're not even allowed to go back. So this is convenient, not just for lowering the pressure of finding everything your first go, but as a way to farm coins or power-ups. Oh yeah, power-ups. It's the direct sequel to the first game, so we're still kind of playing with the same type of Mario health system. Wario takes damage from enemies. He isn't immortal yet like in later games. He starts as regular Wario in all his glory, but if you get hit, you turn into that ugly, weird-ass baby Wario, like, you know, small Wario that has no hat. Yeah, and for some little weird reason, even if you're regular status or powered up, Wario's life counter is always a sprite of Wario without his hat. I just thought that was weird. Wario's jump feels a lot more natural in this game. It doesn't feel like a displaced sprite you vaguely control in the air. You have a lot more sense of weight and can get a handle on the height of his jumps way quicker than the first game. The fluid animations that I mentioned earlier also definitely help in letting you understand his movements better than before. The iconic shoulder bash returns, of course, and feels faster and better, with all those fancy new sprites and animations. Equally as iconic is picking up and throwing pathetic enemies. Doesn't have a weird arc like in Wario Land 2 yet, so it's still just a basic small throw in front of Wario here. You do a funny little belly bounce if you hold down after jumping. You can hold down a run button, and if you do a shoulder ram while jumping, it extends the distance of your jump. Like before, a good number of enemies can't even damage Wario. They can only hurt him if they have spikes on them. Though if you flank their ass, you can just walk into them a couple times, and eventually they'll just fall on their back like a turtle and be at Wario's total mercy. And while I did say that this entry in general is a lot more forgiving, death still has a good amount of weight to it, like in the first one. It's really annoying having to trek through the level again, recollecting all the coins, breaking open all the same boxes for doors. The enemies do pose enough of a threat that you still have to respect them. The best way to deal with them is also the same, the power-ups that were in the first game. And when I say like the same, I mean it basically literally. Though they take the different form of objects, almost all the power-ups in this game are identical to the previous game. Just like I mentioned before, Wario does his belly flop when you hold D-pad down in the midair, so that means that iconic ass quake is relegated to Bull Wario. It also makes Wario heavier and no longer lets you cling to ceilings. A mostly useless detail I'm sure no one ever used in the original, but with it being gone, it means that all it is just a butt stomp. That's it. The Dragon Crystal gives you the same power as before, where Wario's Shoulder Bash is replaced with a slow line of fire that breaks through blocks faster. It works while you're crouched, so you can kill smaller enemies that you wouldn't be able to Shoulder Bash or reach in general, which is fucking the majority of them, so that's kind of annoying, but, you know, this exists, so it's not that bad. Also, random note, look at me getting soft-locked in this tiny corridor. Yeah, I actually had to reset this shit. Anyway, just like before, it can also work underwater. I did notice that they didn't include the detail of making the fire underwater become a laser shot like in the original game. That one felt a little more interesting and showed they cared, which is weird because Wario Land VB is the one that emphasizes you're using the powers of a sea dragon. Doubly weird when you consider how detailed and well animated this game is. Finally, out of the base power-ups, not including the garlic that just returns you to normal after getting hit, is the Eagle statue. Again, it's just Jet Wario from the first game. Kinda makes sense since Jet Wario looked like he had a duck on his head. With it, you're able to fly for a good while, then eventually glide until you either hit something, someone, or you stop yourself. You're faster and at your lightest, so you can get out of quicksand quicker. Well, I could have written that better. And I know it sounds like I might be a bit down on the power-ups being the same, but honestly I don't mind it. They feel just as well used as in the original, providing branching paths in the levels or full-on item requirements to get secrets and treasures. Plus, they did something really interesting with the fact that items are the same. They allow you to combine them. Well, at least the more interesting ones. If Wario can find both an eagle statue and a dragon crystal, he will become King Dragon Wario. Sounds like a fucking final boss. Because it is. You can fly further, shoot fire, you're fast, and it even gives you the bull helmet's ground pound. Sure, it takes the shoulder bash away, but instead is a fucking amazingly overpowered fireball that can go through basically anything. It'll activate hidden blocks, kill all enemies even if they're behind walls. It's just really fucking good. The only thing is that you're heavier, but honestly, who gives a shit? Quicksand's about as much of a problem in this game as it is in real life. You're not gonna die from it, and if you do happen to find it across you, just don't step in it. Another great thing about this form is the fact that it's not even rare. They don't cock tease it or only let you get a sip of it every once in a while. These two power-ups aren't hard to find together or backtrack for. So as long as you don't suck, you can feel as properly powerful as Wario should be. It removes any sense of being just a gimmick and just makes it into a great form to strive for and play better for in order to keep it. It's kind of like the spreader in Contra. It does make you better, but you still have to try and make sure that you don't lose it. And even if you do kind of fuck up and you can't keep the power-ups, like I mentioned before, you can farm them by going back down and then just immediately go back up a level. Whenever you do go up an elevator though, you can choose between two minigames. The heart minigame, which if you remember the first game, getting 100 nets you an extra life. It just consists of jumping back and forth to and fro from the background, trying to collect hearts and occasionally chaos emeralds, which themselves are one full extra life. Another instance where the 3D would have been nice to have, but hey, them's the breaks. The second one is just straight up luck. Pick a multiplier, pick a bag out of a lineup. Higher the multiplier, the more bags there are. Not much to talk about here. Maybe there's some sort of little trick that people figured out, but I don't know it, and I don't want to cheat, so fucking that's my luck. What's nice is that this time around you can play both minigames if you want. You can replay them by going down the elevator and back up, but you do need money for the minigames, so you'll need to collect money, so it's not that much more convenient than just playing normally. Outside of that, there's this dog man, a mole man, eating popcorn while watching TV. I don't know the lore for this man. Yeah. Now with all the shit that's going on here, you'd be worried it's kind of a marathon game, like you really have to try and be your best and finish it as quickly as you can before you have to turn it off and go to bed. But the game actually autosaves after you beat every level. Though it only saves what you ended the level on and doesn't track power-ups, it's still kind of nice and odd having an autosave feature in a classic, retro game. There's even 3 save slots, which wasn't revolutionary by 95 at all or anything, but it is good due to the fact that there's so many different endings to this game. Having multiple files makes it easier to see them. The save files in mind, these are still some decently chunky levels. I have mentioned the theming and design itself is great, full of nooks and crannies, winding paths, hidden blocks, items, etc. There are a total of 14 stages, 4 of them being bosses, so in actuality there's more like 10. It is pretty great how you encounter the first boss though. You come across it and you think it'll just be your standard generic Nintendo boss, you know, crap that's just dead in a couple seconds. Then, after you kill it, you find out it's just your fluffer to get you ready for the big scene with the real boss. Of which is actually pretty decent. All of them are. Like, they're fun. Especially in hard mode, which I'll talk about later. They use the 3D gimmicks well and it makes them unique. As well as lasting longer than your average Nintendo boss, which is like less than a minute. But in all honesty, the levels themselves are just way too good to be outshined by the bosses. They all have their memorable little gimmicks and moments. The fact Wario is so fast underwater and can shoot in them makes them actually fun. Level 11 had a really clever way of getting into the background I liked a lot that I won't spoil. Either it was clever or just a Neanderthal, which I wouldn't doubt. At times you can see Wario swimming up waterfalls. Like, this man's just slowly becoming those old Chuck Norris memes every new game he gets. Level 10 has a clock gimmick where you have to be in a level while your in-game timer hits a new minute in real time for the clock to activate. It's kind of clever, you know, it's fun. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, there's a timer in every level, but you're given like 20 minutes, so they might as well not be there. Even if accounting for a player that explores everything and goes at a very slow pace, these levels are chunky but nowhere near taking up 20 minutes. The timer will only matter and serve as a reminder during hard mode for the true ending. And right now is that later I was talking about earlier. Another element that's brought back from the first game are multiple endings. 8 to be specific, though you don't get them in the same way you did last time. There are 4 achievable endings. If you fail to get all 10 stage treasures by the time you beat the final boss, the ending changes depending on how many coins you had by the end. The beginning of each of these endings is the same. We see a Wario heading back to his plane doing his best Charlie Brown impression, and to rub salt in the wound he gets to his plane and finds out it's been utterly fucked by a bunch of shitty beavers. Obviously Wario is more than willing to murder these little bastards, but when he manages to catch one, the beaver manages to prevent a violent throttling by making an offer to Wario. The offer being that Wario give him all the coins he has and he'll arrange some transportation to make up for the plane. I'm not sure why Wario doesn't just threaten him with death at this point, seeing as he just did kill a demon, but Wario is forced to agree because these are the shitty endings. If you somehow manage to beat the game with less than 5,000 coins, Wario has to literally flap his way back home with 2 fans strapped to his arms. If you get 5,000 or more coins, you get a bike affixed to a blimp that you have to pedal to propel on homeward. Now we get to big boy numbers. 20,000 coins and you get a fucking dragon and its children to ride home on. Honestly, that's a fucking hell of an upgrade from a seaplane. A weaponized form of travel and free children? What a steal. If you get 50 fucking thousand coins, they just full on replace his plane with a new one that Wario doesn't even bother even riding inside of. It just has remote control action. Honestly, it's not as good as the dragon, but still not bad. And here's where we finally get to the good endings. Though, first I do have to talk about hard mode. That's weird, right? Imagine that a Nintendo game having an honest-to-goodness hard mode. It's not even fucking around either. It's like legitimately a hard mode. This isn't hero mode. Like, you don't just lose more hearts. It requires speed, dexterity, adaptability. Adaptability being needed because they truly trolled the shit out of anyone who liked to rush through the levels in normal mode. That includes any little shortcuts or straight up random sections. They're just filled to the ass with spikes. Spikes are everywhere. There are also less hearts, less coins, less power-ups. The boss stages are on ×2 speed, and they have more obstacles inside of them as well. Consisting of, you guessed it, spikes. It's really fun facing these fuckers again. You actually have to learn the patterns and not just be patient and wait for your turn to hit them like before. You have to adapt to their new speed. Hard mode in general is just a really enjoyable experience. The only thing that remains the same are the treasures. Even then they are different treasures, it's just the same locations. I honestly really recommend thinking of the normal playthrough as a warm-up and easy way to learn the levels, and hard mode as the actual game. It's not brutally difficult or anything, it's just a good fair challenge. Enter, know the routes, find the treasure, get the key, get to the exit as fast as possible. Rinse and repeat until you're good enough to do it all in under an hour and a half. It's not easy, but again, it's not unfair. No looping around, you don't need coins if you're going for the best ending. I did mention in my Wario Land 2 video that my favorite reward in platformers and games in general are final boss levels. Not a level with a boss necessarily, rather a level that really busts your balls. A level that demands to see your fucking credentials. While Wario Land 2 perfectly scratched that itch, this game still did give me my second favorite reward, gratification. A simple congratulations for being a master player brings a smile out of my face. It's kind of the same smile I got when I beat the Path of Pain in Hollow Knight and realized there's no achievement for it. I don't think there's much that can match the purity of doing something challenging for yourself, rather than showing off that you could to the whole world with an achievement. With that being said, now you know what hard mode is, so you've earned the right to know what the latter 4 endings of the game are. These are the best endings, though the final 2 are kind of copies of the preceding 2 with slight differences. Anyway, having gotten all the treasures to unlock the cave vault, Wario gets more gold than he'll ever be able to use, making those first endings irrelevant. First off, these 2 are if you get all the treasures on normal mode. The first one, if you have more than 2 hours of playtime, Wario flies home on a magic carpet with a treasure and demon's bottle. If you get all the treasure and beat it in under 2 hours, supposedly, Wario will get a sweet bunny riding shotgun with him on the carpet. Now, for getting all the treasures on hard mode, if you get all the treasures in over 2 hours, you get the carpet ending again, but this time with a demon head serving as Wario's new concubine. The all-time best ending, however, is if you beat the game on hard, get all the treasures and do it all in under 2 hours. Which, I don't know if it was a bug for me or what, but I swear this only triggers if you beat the game in under an hour and a half. Under 2 hours did not trigger the final ending for me in the 3 attempts of doing it. It was only on the 4th when I did it in an hour and 26 or something like that I actually got the final true ending. Anyway, that true ending is Wario heading home with the carpet, treasure, and the same hot bunny bimbo for him to split in half like an old piece of firewood. Honestly, it's all any of us could ever really want out of life. Wario continues representing the American dream. You even get a sweet little message congratulating you on being a master gamer for getting the best ending. Which, like I said, is always just a nice little reward. I couldn't think of a better ending than knowing Wario will get some Playboy puss after the credits are over. But Wario Land 2 is definitely still the gold standard for Wario Land relative to where I am and revisiting them. Though that doesn't mean you should skip VB Wario Land at all. This fits a much safer and sensible sequel mold. It still heavily resembles the first game, but just makes it better. It challenges your speed, focuses on treasures being the main goal so you don't have to grind luck-based minigames unless you're trying to see all the endings in the, no treasure runs. A better sense of speed in general, better animations, better level themes, the level design itself is less claustrophobic, and there's neither sight nor sound of Mario or any other Nintendo characters. This is truly Wario's land now. We're just living in it. And after all that is said and done, we really owe emulation developers a great deal. Without them, game preservation would be basically non-existent. Especially with companies who are as incompetently greedy with it as Nintendo. And not even just the, developers of software that allows you to emulate shit, but the people who have dumped game files online, especially for rare games, just thanks. Without you, I would have never been able to experience this little gem, because God knows I can't afford a fucking Virtual Boy. Thanks to the Mednafen team who developed the Beetle VB core I was playing this on, through the equally amazing RetroArch. It's available on Steam with the system cores as free DLC to download. It's all free, obviously, and I'm only mentioning RetroArch because it just streamlines it for dummies like me. So even if you're bad at setting up emulators, just get RetroArch and watch a couple YouTube videos on it, and it's really, really easy to get it going. But man, what a depressing hobby gaming would be without emulation. Though do try and figure out how to get the monochrome color palette working for VB Wario Land. I wasn't joking about the red and black searing my eyes. It genuinely fucking gave me a headache after a while. And definitely was not meant to be experienced on a fucking large ass TV. I even had the lights turned on. It hurts. It hurts. Well, that was Virtual Boy Wario Land, the wonderfully named game. And from what I've heard, the best game on the Virtual Boy, if not one of the only good ones. While the Virtual Boy was an immense failure, Wario Land shows it wasn't without merit. Had they been given more time, maybe more funding or workshopping, rather than as a way to fill a console slot in a yearly corporate report, it could have been something great. Who knows? I only mention this because in the writing of the script and light research, I noticed that this was the last significant game produced by Gunpei Yokoi before his departure from Nintendo and untimely death the following year. Yokoi's the guy that you might have heard about basically positioning Nintendo toward video games. He began as a janitor for Nintendo, and actually a janitor. This isn't some bullshit Hot Cheetos story. And then he transitioned to other menial positions like an assembly line worker for Nintendo Hanafuda cards. One day he was noticed by the president of Nintendo at the time, Hiroshi Yamauchi, while he was playing around with his little Ultra Hand toy, something he had made in his spare time. Of course, that led to the company actually producing the Ultra Hand as a toy. and it was a huge hit for Nintendo, something they definitely needed at the time, after a long history of meandering from fad to fad. Yokoi ended up producing a plethora of other successful toys, which eventually led to the creation of the Game & Watch, which, by the way, donned the first cross-shaped control pad we now know as a D-pad. He also created the goddamn Game Boy, alongside Nintendo R&D 1, which he managed and oversaw from its inception until his departure. He served as Miyamoto and his generation's mentor and source of ideals for what creating video games should be about. Yokoi also produced the robotic operating buddy. That's right, Rob. This man created the very toy that managed to sneak video games back into American households, and kickstart the video game market right back into high gear, where it remains to this day. Though hardware wasn't the only thing he was involved with, like I said, he was a mentor to Shigeru Miyamoto and his peers. He helped produce Fire Emblem, Kid Icarus, the Mario Land series, and Metroid, as well as many spin-off and one-off titles. It just seems like he always added a very fun and esoteric feel to the games he was involved with. Think about how strange the first two Mario Lands are compared to the mainline counterparts. How unique Metroid and Kid Icarus are. They possess an essence of experimentation and desire to be fun that I feel almost all modern large companies lack nowadays. He wasn't just building brands that were rigid in their consistency for brand recognition. He was trying to create fun for people, and hopefully make money from doing it. He wasn't hired on as some suit who gambled on video games or worked his way up from the advertising department like the current president. He was just some janitor who had the kind of brain that thought making toys was fun, and that led Nintendo to their destiny as one of the biggest video game companies to ever exist. I guess seeing his influence in such crucial beginning moments for Nintendo's foray into games made me realize just how influential he was. I knew about him before, but never really realized just how important he was. I think Virtual Boy Wario Land is an amazing, weird, and obscure little game that serves as a great representation of who Gunpei Yokoi was, at least professionally. Even in one of his failures, that being the Virtual Boy, you can find something so amazing to have fun with. I just hope he isn't lost to the sands of time. With all the worship and obsession other figures from gaming get, Miyamoto, Aonuma, Kojima, it seems the mainstream never really bothered to mention Yokoi, which is insane. I can confidently say Nintendo would have never gotten to where they are now without him. He's more than worth remembering, and this weird little Wario Land game is a pretty fun send-off to such a creative man. I guess I just felt like going over his history as a way to try and contribute to him being remembered. Even if this video won't break triple digits, and I don't intend it to, I wish this wonderful send-off was better preserved than just through emulation. I don't want to be frying my retinas on original hardware, and as fantastic as emulation is, there are just things you can't emulate. Specific gimmick controllers, like the bongos, Wiimotes, that giant tank controls for that one game, or any other add-ons, and especially, obviously, stereoscopic 3D, and who knows how many other things just can't be replicated. They can't be emulated. They're physical goods that you need to play the game. I did mention how insane it is to me that Nintendo never made this into a 3D classic on the 3DS. God forbid we've missed out on playing Excitebike in the third dimension, or missed out on obscure titles like Kirby's Adventure or Kid Icarus. But then being stupid and inconsiderate of history in every way other than whoring it out for nostalgia is a Nintendo staple. Wario Land is one of many properties Nintendo has left to rot, so sure, bring Kirby's Adventure to 3D, but God forbid you actually give people a chance to play a fantastic game that was actually meant to be played in 3D. Thankfully, like I mentioned before, no matter what features it may be lacking, the game has been preserved, and can be played by even dummies like me. For all intents and purposes, it's free, so you don't really have an excuse to not play it. See how fast you can beat it on hard while getting all the treasures. We all need a good dose of Wario in our lives every now and then. He's the leading cause of happiness and healthier lifestyles. It's been proven. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed listening to some handicapped man obsessed with Wario blab on about his most obscure outing in the Land series of games. Have a good rest of your day or night, or whatever time it is.